Hello beautiful people, welcome back to the channel. Pots and Petals here, everything garden and allotment related. So I've just popped down today because I would like to perform some surgery on the Cordyline plant just over here. So by that I mean I'm just going to be taking some cuttings from them. It's the first time I've done this, so I'm a little worried, but I have done quite a bit of research. So let's see if we can go over there and work our magic. Come on. Before we get cutting into the actual Cordyline, I'm just going to take you through some of the equipment that I've got ready before we actually start the process, and this will apply to any cuttings at all. So first of all, you're going to need some pots, quite small, you don't want them too big to drown out the plant, and then you're going to need to fill these up with some compost with either some grit or vermiculite or perlite, just to free up that soil to stop it getting too waterlogged. If it gets too waterlogged, those roots are going to really struggle to thrive in that soil. By adding the perlite or the grit, you're actually going to help encourage that root growth. You're going to need a nice sharp knife, and you want to make sure it's sharp so that you can take a nice cutting, because if you don't, you might damage the actual plant that you're taking the cutting off, which will allow diseases to get in. So make sure this is nice and sharp, and they do say to try and clean it between each cut, but I just clean mine at the end of each day and I don't seem to have any problems, just with a disinfectant. And then the optional bit is the rooting powder. So you will find that a lot of these plants will just root naturally, but I've never done a Cordyline, so I'm not too sure. So we are going to try some rooting powder, and then we've just got some water here because you just want to dip the end of the plant into the water and then into the rooting powder and into your pot. The reason why we're doing all of this beforehand is because as soon as you've made that cut, you've got a chance of that starting to dry out, so you want to get that in the soil as quickly as possible. So once we've filled these up with the compost and some form of grit, perlite, vermiculite, then we'll give these a nice water so that the cuttings have got something really nice to go into. So here's the Cordyline. If you didn't know, this actually died back in the winter, and I took the top completely off because it started shooting from the bottom rather than putting any new growth on the top. And since I've cut the top off, all of these pups that are coming from the bottom have just shot up, and they're probably now a foot long. So I want to go in and I want to remove the smallest of the pups and leave maybe a few of the bigger ones on, and see whether it can still turn into quite a large shrub. Eventually the Cordyline will be removed out of this tub and put into the ground, because I know it does need a lot more water and it needs to get its roots down into the soil. I really like the Cordyline because it is a real hardy plant, but it also looks so tropical, and they do so well in this climate. The plan is to take the smaller ones off with a knife, because I don't think that these larger shoots are going to do very well if I cut them off. I think they're going to do better on the plant, and there's probably 3 of those. I will just take the smaller ones off with a knife. If there's any underneath the soil level, I'm going to see if they've got any roots already on them and take them with the roots as well. Let's just have a little move around the plant and see what we can find. So that didn't go to plan. I broke the first one. Let's move on to the next one. I'm going to have to be quick because I don't want this to dry out, but as you can see, that is one of the pups or suckers that has come off the bottom of the plant, and I've used a sharp knife just to cut away around. Now I've tried to get that to a point if possible, and you want this white membrane because that is where your roots are going to start to form from. So this brown bit, that's the bark, but this membrane here, I understand, that is what can start forming the roots. So we'll want to pop this in one of the little pots with the vermiculite and the compost. two in here, so I might have forgotten to use the rooting powder on the ones in the pots, my bad, but I've definitely used them on these two. So hopefully these two will root, and then once I notice that they've rooted, I will just pop these into their own pots. They were quite big compared to the other ones. And then on the main plant at the back, we have just left 3 of the shoots on there. So the hope is that it will give off 3 large branches that will all go off in different directions. Hopefully, once we've got it in the ground, it will be able to get a lot bigger and it will be able to get a lot more nutrients and water. So these are the 6 that I've potted up in their own little pots. Now my only worry is that they're quite big and they've got quite a bit of foliage. So I'm just going to go in and remove some of those longer leaves just to reduce them down a little bit so that the plant hasn't got to focus its energy on the whole plant and just enough for it to get through this little bit. All I've done is I've gone round, and the leaves that are on the furthest of the outside I've cut the shortest because they're the oldest, and then as we work into the plant they're the longer leaves that I've kept on. So the centre leaves I've left near enough the same length as what they are. Now these are just going to be popped inside the poly house. It's quite humid in there. You want your cuttings to be put in a nice humid condition. So if they are quite small cuttings, you could pop a little plastic bag over the top of them just to keep that nice humidity in there for them. But these will be absolutely fine in the poly house. So this is going to be their little home for the next few weeks. So they will take a little while before they start rooting, but all you need to do is just check the bottom of the pot and the little holes that you've got. You should start seeing little rootlets appear, and then I'd give it another month or so before you start thinking about potting them up any bigger. Cordlines aren't too fussed about being root bound. They'll soon let you know if they're not a fan of the pot and if it's too small by starting to turn yellow, but these little things will be absolutely fine in these size pots for quite a while. And then whilst we're in here, I thought we better harvest one of these cucumbers because they're getting quite beefy now. That is not a bad shout for my first cucumber of the year. I reckon that's about 10 inches long. And look what else I've spotted. First tomato. So I think that's just being asked to be eaten, isn't it? I think these are calling to be a salad tonight, so we'll get these harvested as well. I better think about getting some of these carrots out because we've now got germination with the beetroot here, the radish, and there is another line of beetroot in there, and some of this is flopping over, so let's see if we can get some of these carrots out to take home as well. Not a bad little carrot harvest there. So we've got the rainbow carrots here. So we've got a mixture of white, even though that one's turned a little bit green, but we can chop that off. The standard orange and also a light orange as well. And they smell absolutely beautiful. Not a bad little harvest at all. So the spring onions and carrots, they'll be used in a salad for tonight and during the week. Carrots also freeze up pretty good. And then the cucumber, can't wait to have that on the salad. Cucumber, tomato, feta, beautiful. And then the potatoes, well, they store well anyway, so we'll take them home. Totally forgot about doing a farewell clip at the end of the video. So here is a view of my nan and granddad's back garden, which they absolutely adore. They used to have a lot of beds in here, but it just got too much for them. So they've got loads of pots and containers dotted around, but it's absolutely beautiful in here. Before we go, I did just want to read a little excerpt from my new book, The Well-Gardened Mind by Sue Stuart-Smith. So this just really resonated with me. It says, "Like a suspension in time, the protected space of a garden allows our inner world and the outer world to coexist, free from the pressures of everyday life. Garden in this sense offers us an in-between space, which can be a meeting place between our innermost dream-infused selves and the real physical world. For me personally, I find the garden is a beautiful place where the everyday pressures just don't seem to weigh as much, and it just allows you that time to contemplate and think about things a little more deeply, but maybe not with the stress that you would if you were out of the garden. So yeah, it just really resonated with me. Let me know if you know any good gardening books that you're a real fan of that changed your gardening experience, because I'd love to know. I am a big fan of reading. But that is all we've got time for today, folks. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and all of that good stuff. And I'll be back again at the weekend with some more videos down the plot. So take care, guys. Bye bye.